tonight's program. Thank you for coming. Welcome to today's candidate forum, focusing on the Tulsa County Sheriff's race. Candidates tonight joining us are Rex Berry and Vic Regolato. Thank you both for coming and participating in tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Tulsa is pleased to co-sponsor today's forum with the Tulsa Community College. I'm Zeba Brandstetter, Editor-in-Chief of The Frontier and the moderator of tonight's forum. The Frontier is this evening's media sponsor, and I want to first review the format for tonight. We're using the League of Women Voters guidelines for this forum, so please hold all applause until the forum is finished. There are many here who favor one person, and if we applaud as they speak, it takes time away from their answers, which that's what we're all here to hear, right? No campaign signs or posters nor demonstrations are allowed in the room during the forum. Distributing, candidate information on the property is not permitted. We want to make this a neutral environment where both candidates can have their say and we can all hear them. Candidates will have 2 minutes each for their opening statement, 2 minutes each for closing, and 1 minute to respond to each question from the audience. A timekeeper will keep track of the time, raising cards when there are 15 seconds left and another when time is out. Our timekeeper is Karen Cardenas. Thank you, Karen. Please raise your card so that the candidates know where to look. When you have a question, raise your card. And volunteers are passing out index cards and pencils, and they're collecting written questions. These will be given to a panel to screen. We have a panel over here. So they are Elizabeth Harris, President of the League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Tulsa, Kevin Canfield, our own Kevin Canfield from the Frontier, and Kurt Lively, Assistant Professor of Liberal Arts from Tulsa Community College. Thank you all for doing this tonight. The screeners are going to look for the following. They're going to look for questions that are worded in a way that is general enough so that all the candidates can respond to them. Questions directed to only one candidate are not going to be asked. Questions need to be relevant for this particular office, so keep that in mind when you're writing your questions. The League volunteers can assist you with wording questions if you need. The screeners group questions in categories of a similar nature, and they give me a representative of one to ask. So that if there are 5 questions on immigration, for example, we're going to have something that I try to sort of summarize and group into one subject matter. Also, questions that are inappropriate for the branch of government involved in this forum, in this case the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, are going to be set aside. The candidates have flipped a coin tonight to determine the order for opening statements. The order will be reversed for closing statements. They will answer questions in alternate order. Anybody have any questions about the format? Okay, so let's get started with the opening statements from Rex Berry. He won the card draw and will begin this evening's forum.
My name is Rex Berry. I'm your Democrat candidate for sheriff. I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for this forum, and I appreciate the media and Ms. Brandstetter for refereeing our match. And I certainly appreciate my opponent, Vic Regolato. He has a very distinguished history with the police department. The main things that I see that I wish to bring to the Sheriff's Department is leadership. For a long time, the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office has suffered and been victimized by opportunistic, uninvolved, and self-serving leadership. There's been no clear direction to the officers or to the deputies from those above them. And from what I understand, they have some very fine deputies and employees in the Sheriff's Office. The rules and regulations they were to follow from a practical perspective were non-existent. With me, you're going to have an involved leader who will lead by example, and I will stand strong with those who are committed to returning the Sheriff's Office to the high level of pride and professionalism that citizens of Tulsa County deserve. I will immediately request a Department of Justice forensic audit of the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office jails, all funding going into and out of all of the accounts, assuring where the accounts are. I also want an audit of personnel, knowing what all the job descriptions, qualifications, and selection procedures were. We cannot effectively address the issues and the problems that have developed over the last 4 years without knowing what they are. My philosophy on transparency is anything that's paid for with taxpayer dollars belongs to you. I will make a single point of entry so that whenever a request is made, there will be time and date stamped, and now it will be up to me to make sure those responses are given back in a timely fashion. I will also address any baseless and irresponsible rhetoric that has stigmatized any of the members of our community. Thank you.
Vic Regalato, Republican nominee for Tulsa County Sheriff's Office. Again, as well, thank you to the League of Women both for having us out here, and thanks to Rex. He's a gentleman, and I absolutely believe that. So, and at the end of the day, just like all the other candidates in the past, our main goal is to serve the citizens of Tulsa County. Many of you have heard of the CSI report. I mentioned it quite some time ago, and it basically provides a blueprint of everything that was wrong with the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, as well as things that can be improved upon, rebuilt, and in some cases gotten rid of. The thing is, that just came out, I believe, a week and a half ago. October 10th, I announced my candidacy for the Sheriff's Office, and from that point forward, I've been saying the same thing that the CSI report came out. And I believe that the true purpose of that and what it showed was that there was a lack of leadership. I do believe that. There was a lack of accountability. Everybody in the office should be accountable to the same policies, procedures that deputies, DOs are. And more importantly, I believe that the leadership should be held to a higher standard. And I've said that since October 10th. There's a lot of things to do foundationally speaking. And once that we get those things in place, we can move forward with some serious positive change, and I think that people are going to see it, and they're going to buy into it, because we're going to get back to the basics if I'm elected. Thing is, I'm not going to do it by myself. I do not have all the answers. I have reached out to several people in the community. I plan to reach out to several more. I want them to be a part of solutions, not simply pointing out problems. Together, I believe we can really come up with some wonderful answers. And I want everybody, every community, to be represented in it, as long as they're willing to come up with solutions instead of pointing out problems. Pointing out problems is easy. Having a plan and a solution, that's the tough part, especially if we're going to do it right, so that we can have lasting effects. We will not have knee-jerk reactions to anything. Everything that will be done will be carefully thought out, and that includes any type of movement should I take office April 11th. And I've got the stop sign. So anyway, thank you and enjoy the rest of the program.
Gentlemen, we've received many questions tonight regarding the role of the Sheriff's Office in enforcing immigration policy, their relation to the Hispanic community. So I want to ask you both, would you change any of the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office policies related to the enforcement of law regarding undocumented persons? Rex.
Okay. Are you specifically referring to 287G?
Yeah, there's a program that the Sheriff's Office now has in place.
Okay, yes. 287G, I believe, has gone through 2 transitions. 287G, to the best of my understanding, which is, it was a dodge by our U.S. legislature, instead of them handling the issues of how to handle the transition, bringing immigrants into the United States. They've kind of pushed that back to the local government, pretty much without any real enforcement ability to go with it. To my knowledge and to my opinion, from what I've seen of it, it primarily stigmatizes a large segment of our community and has polarized us. I will follow the laws as written, but at this point I don't see the continuation of stigmatizing undocumented human beings as being in our benefit.
Briefly, 287G is a partnership with the Department of Homeland Security with an emphasis on undocumented people who are engaged in criminal activity. We will continue that partnership. If you're committing crimes here, I don't want you. I don't want you in Tulsa. I don't want you in our country. I've made that very clear. That will continue. That being said, we're going to provide law enforcement services regardless of citizenship status, religion, ethnicity, anything like that. We must provide law enforcement services equally and across the board, despite any of those things. But in regards to the partnership, we will continue that. And if you're committing crimes here and you're here illegally, yes, you will be dealt with.
Okay. We have several questions about cronyism in the department. Obviously, we've been through that with the current scandal with the Sheriff's Office. So what are your intentions for the Reserve Deputy program? Do you intend to keep a tiered system similar to what is already in place? Will Reserve Deputies ever be able to work alone without the direct supervision of a full-time deputy? And a related question regards, Reserve Deputies that are political donors and are going to stop that practice. And I think Vic, you can go first.
Currently, this reserve program is on suspension. The CSI report recommends scratching it and starting over. I am going to come in and evaluate. I believe in the reserve program. These are individuals that typically have their own career, yet decide to use law enforcement to serve their community and give back. I think it's an admirable program, and it will continue. As far as scratching it and starting over, I'm not going to say that until I've gotten in and I've looked at it. I've got to believe that there are quality people in there that have gone through the quality training. Now, if their training has not been documented or they're not up to snuff, then yes, we'll start over if need be. But I think at this point, from the outside looking in, to say that I'm going to scratch it completely and start over, no, I'm not going to tell you that. But it will be evaluated, and at the end of the day, they will have the same training as a full-time deputy. Thank you.
I am not in favor of terminating or scratching the reserve program. With my experience in 26 years with the police department, working with reserve officers, reserve deputies, not only do they fulfill a very important, viable function in supporting us, supplementing us, they're also a very important part of our public-community relations. That said, the county sheriff's reserve program needs to be put on hold for a small period of time until we've had a chance to completely review it. Everybody in there needs to be fully documented, fully certified for their positions. No, they will not be allowed to be turned loose to make arrest or patrol on their own. I believe that's also going to be in violation of state law under clique conditions. But I believe in keeping them involved. Once we've gone through the problems, made a full review of it, review of the policies and procedures on it, find out what our problems are, clean it back up, put it back into motion.
Thank you. Obviously administrative experience is very important with the problems that we've had in the Sheriff's Office. So I want you both to describe your administrative experience and how you will lead the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office moving forward as an administrator. And Rex, you can start first.
Well, I had 26 years on the Tulsa Police Department. I was in the child abuse, child homicide unit, family violence unit. From there, to my last 2.5 years, I was at the academy as the grants administrator, handling our state and federal grants, working with the Department of Justice. Probably the single largest grant I wrote was one for $9 million, which we had approved by the Department of Justice. It was later Mayor Savage and Chief Palmer decided not to institute. And when I was involved in that, it meant that I had to determine what kind of manning levels, cost, etc., that we had to do with that equipment. After that, when I went to Kosovo, I became the Chief of Logistics. In fact, that was 2 years of 10 I was overseas, and part of that was bringing back war damage and war ravaged police stations, determining the manning levels, what kind of equipment was necessary, what's going to be our cost, public support, and whenever these were in pretty remote regions, what kind of transportation and logistics were involved, and keeping a couple of them running at one time.
22 years with the Tulsa Police Department. Worked a variety of assignments, including patrol, homicide, fugitive warrants, where I was a cross-deputized U.S. Marshal. I've been on the Special Operations team as a tactical operator for about a decade. I've worked as a homicide investigator for nearly 11 years. I worked 23 officer-involved shootings. I'm considered an expert in both state and federal court in regards to violent crimes investigations, as well as use of force by police. And I think that is probably at the top of everybody's mind in regards to law enforcement in the country. So I'm certainly experienced in dealing with those issues. As far as the leadership, being engaged is going to be the biggest thing. Being at the sheriff's office under the circumstances is going to take a lot of energy, and just simply being there. and being engaged and making sure that all parts are running smoothly, for lack of a better term, and are equipped to do their job and serve you as a law enforcement agency.
So we have several questions about public trust and transparency after all that we've been through. And as a reporter, I would like you all to be specific, because there have been many, many issues for us in the media and public getting information with the Sheriff's Office. So I just want to ask you both how you will work to restore public trust and transparency. To the Sheriff's Office, Vic, you can go first.
Communication is the single most factor, in my opinion, in mending and building and keeping relationships with the community. Bringing you in, having a representative from every community, meeting once a month in a focus group to figure out what are the issues, how can we fix those issues, how are things going, how can we be engaged. Can we have a booth at a festival that certain communities having? Can we show up at a church? Do you need a speaker from the Sheriff's Office? Being engaged in the community, just like being engaged within the Sheriff's Office, is a type of leadership that builds relationships. And as in regards to the media, yes, I do believe in communicating with the media. I think it's, in fact, been one of the biggest problems for the Sheriff's Office, to be quite frank. We'll abide by the rules and regulations in relationship to the media, but we will be open and we will communicate much more effectively. Thank you.
For me, as I said, transparency means that anything that has been paid for you by the taxpayers belongs to you. Any reports, any documents, the qualifications, the history, anything that happens there that you paid for belongs to you. I have had the same problem as some of the members of the news media. A partner of mine approached the Sheriff's Office with a public freedom of information request over the organizational charts, budgets, issues from the Sheriff's Office from the last several years. We did not get a response. I sent a request to Sheriff Robinette asking the status on it. She could not tell me that those had ever been requested. That is not transparency. One of the first steps is going to be to establish a single point of access where a citizen or the media can come in, make a request on what they wish. That person is going to know where that request should go. Should not be up to you to know which department or which agency is supposed to look at it. It is dated, time-stamped, and then it becomes my responsibility to make sure that it comes out in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Obviously, these days, a lot of us see video on YouTube or wherever about law enforcement officers having exchanges with the public, and the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, to my knowledge, has no body cameras, dash cam. So I want to know your position, each of you, on how you feel about sheriff's deputies wearing body cameras while on duty.
I'm in favor of the body cams. One of the first issues that came up and when I was first asked this question is, what about the costs on that? And I made a review for it. Of course, the original cost of buying it's not going to be that much. The cost is going to be the maintenance and the storage of it. That said, if we're willing to spend a couple of $1 million a year defending lawsuits, we can come up with the money for the body cams. Anybody having direct contact with the public should be wearing a body cam.
We agree on the point of the body cams. I believe that they are essential. They provide direct evidence. They have been shown to lessen complaints from citizens. And in fact is, in today's world, you're on camera every 30 seconds, I think, is from an article I read, and I believe it because of the gang unit supervisor. I feel weird if I don't have somebody filming me on their cell phone. So it's a part of life. I do believe that they have a place in law enforcement. That being said, it's going to cost more than a couple $1 million for maintenance and storage. It's going to be in the millions. And I'm all for finding a solution to that because I do believe in them. I do believe that they provide some transparency. But together we're going to have to find those solutions, whether through grants, who knows. But you know, again, I go back to, I don't have all the answers, but I'll certainly sit down with a group of people that are informed and we'll come up with a solution to get those. Thank you.
One of the issues that has been raised in the whole fallout of the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office problems regards the building of the Stanley Williams Training Center the 911 center that used to be shared with the city of Tulsa being sort of brought in-house. There were claims that that saved money, but I'm wondering what ways each of you can talk about that the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office can work closely with the area police departments and sort of have more cooperation, sharing data, reduce duplication of the budget. So there are things like, law enforcement procedures that maybe, you may be able to collaborate with the area police departments. And so the question is, what ways can the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office work closely with the area police departments? Mm-hmm.
We all have the same mission in law enforcement, and that's providing citizens with professional law enforcement services. We can work together in certain parts. The Sheriff's Office is responsible for a variety of different things that City PD is not. But there are things that we can do together. Currently, Tulsa County Sheriff's Office has individuals that are training with the TPD SWAT team. I think that's the first step, training. Potentially sharing of facilities. The mention was made of the training center. Just to touch on that. That's something that I'm going to look at. If we can afford it, and the forecast says that from years to come, it's not going to be a financial burden, I would love to have something like that. That being said, if it's not, and it's going to be a financial burden, then we'll figure out something to do with it. But there are a variety of things that we can do, up to and including supplementing each other, especially in the other surrounding communities. I don't want them to be forgotten. I think there has to be a relationship built, and in some cases mended there. But that's how we're going to work together to effectively provide law enforcement services for you. Thank you.
Well, that's quite a few questions to address in 1 minute. Cooperation between the Sheriff's Department and the local police departments has been a problem for some time. I was kind of surprised by seeing these number of problems, because I remember when we did the jail unification that the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office and the jail was supposed to solve all our problems, and it seems like that constant bickering over what the jail costs could be has now driven us further apart. One of the things that we can do is make a good set of contracts, set down, here's what we are, we'll know what your costs are going to be, those will not come back up during that period. We need to have a good line of communication. We have too much problems between individual issues of paperwork, how the the criminal reports flow. The other issue on the training center, I cannot find a justification for it to ever have existed. Directly across from it is the Tulsa Police Training Center. It was built in 1991, I believe it was, with federal funds as an area training center. The police department, local agencies are allowed to use it for free. Right now, the sheriff's training facility costs us $37,000 a month, or $444,000 a year for something we can't use. Unless there's a real good justification to keep it, we let it go.
I'd like to ask you both, how do you plan to build trust with our growing Latino population in Tulsa, and how does that relate to your stance on undocumented Tulsans? Rex? So the issue is building trust with the Latino population, and what your stance is on undocumented Tulsans. Yeah, you're first.
Me first. Okay. Sorry, I lost my place on there.
No worries.
Again, undocumented persons, and I do not like the term illegal aliens, and stigmatizing it makes them sound somewhat less than human. The current rule is pretty much set by the federal government. If we find someone that does not have proper documentation, that they can actually be held for up to 48 hours and the federal government does not take steps, they're to be released. I do not like the polarization that we've been putting out here, particularly with the undocumented individuals, but we've also been stigmatizing the Hispanic community where they're afraid to come forward, and we also have been unfairly stigmatizing the Islamic community. Most of these statements are completely baseless, and they've been used strictly to push out fear in the political game.
Someone answered in on an earlier question. We'll provide law enforcement service regardless of citizenship status. On my own police department, that is what we do, and it has worked effectively. Again, I'll detail what part the Sheriff's Office has, and that's through the 287G program, which we will continue. Just like any community, if you're committing crimes, then yes, you're going to go to jail. And if you're committing crimes and you're here illegally, yes, through the Department of Homeland Security, there will be a hold placed on you if you're committing crimes in Tulsa County. I think that pretty much sums up my stance on that.
I want to ask each of you about policies and what you want to do when you first get in office if elected. So what one specific policy will you implement within the first 6 months of your term, if there's anything that you particularly plan to change? Vic, you go first.
Well, there's a multitude of policies that certainly need to be looked at, but disciplinary protocol, I think, is the biggest one in regards to having a stable work environment, which is what I've talked about. You have to have it fair and distributed equally across the board, despite rank, despite position in the office. And it has to be fair. My understanding is that it currently isn't, and it hasn't been for quite some time. So in regards to one of the first policies, that would be it. Probably equally will be the use of force. That is probably the single most important policy procedure that you have to have in place. And currently I've looked at it and it's ambiguous at best, but we'll take care of that part. So those are two of the policies that I will certainly look at first upon entering office. Thank you.
Probably the single most important policy is at the administrative level. For a very long time, the policies and procedures of the Tulsa Sheriff's Office have been more of just a concept than they have been in existence. From talking with some of the deputies and then reviewing the CSR report, which I've read several times, it's great material which you sleep with, is that the policies and procedures were subject to change very frequently and sometimes a couple times a day, with many of them at one time. People are not going to know what they're supposed to work under. They're not going to feel comfortable in their job or confident in their actions unless they know that they are following it. So clear guidelines, clear policies and procedures are critical to making this work. So the very first one is, from administration, let's straighten up the policies and procedures. Let's make them consistent and reliable.
Thank you. There's a question here about civilian oversight, which is a controversial topic among law enforcement agencies. It says, are you in favor of civilian oversight of internal affairs? But I'll probably broaden that. Generally, the model is some kind of board, some kind of civilian oversight board over the whole department. And so I want a yes or no, are you in favor of it, and how would you, what kind of model would you envision if there were any civilian oversight over the Sheriff's Department?
Okay, is it civilian oversight in regards to the entire department or office, or to internal affairs, or
The whole department.
the whole department? Yeah, I think so. I'm open to it. It just depends on what segment, because there is, and let's talk about internal affairs. You have to be trained. You have to understand the issues and be able to fairly look at those issues as they come across. And if there's a civilian person that is willing to go through the training and be a part of it, I'm open to it. I am. Arbitrarily bringing somebody in that does not have the best interest of the community or the office, no, but I think that'll be readily apparent. But there's training that needs to come with it, but at the end of the day, I would be open to it, yes.
To be a citizens review board, and I want to be cautious on using that term because that's not got a term that is universally accepted by everybody. That said, part of the transparency is that you are entitled to know what's going on within your police department or your law enforcement, your sheriff's department. I have been through numerous changes on the police department where it seems like every 3 years there's a new expert that comes out that tells us how to do our job better than we know how to do it. Sometimes they actually know something on there. But for it to work, your law enforcement has to have confidence they are going to be treated fairly within it. So the way I would like to begin that would be with a citizens advisory board, where they're able to come in, help with the setting of policies, we look at it, have some of them go through, say, the CLEAP training, have them go through ride-along, so they understand what it looks like from the officer's point of view. Whether or not that gives them a profound knowledge, I can't tell you, but that will give them more standing with the officers, knowing that the person has been there.
We've just been through a trial regarding a young woman who was in the Tulsa County Jail. She won her case. there were many issues raised during the trial about the treatment of young girls, specifically in the jail. So I want to ask each of you, what are your specific plans to ensure the safety of minors in Tulsa County correctional facilities? Rex, you can go first.
After following the trial on that and reading the reports on it, I find it absolutely inexcusable and abhorrent how the juvenile females are treated there. It's inexcusable that we don't have female matrons there. The males have no business there. There should be cameras making sure there are no blind spots, no blind corners. Once a male officer or a detention officer is found going in there alone, he should be dismissed immediately. That said, also, there's no reason for them to have been treated in such an isolation fashion. If someone is being held in the county jail, unless there's a conviction, they're still an innocent person. They should not be subject to extreme conditions on a suspicion. If they haven't been convicted, they're still an innocent person. They're entitled to humane treatment.
I agree with most of that, and but there are several laws in place that you need to understand. Juveniles cannot be in eyesight of adults. That's the reason they were in isolation. That being said, exactly, there should not have been any blind spots, and there is no reason, absolutely none, why we could not have had a female DO there. If we have to play overtime, and they don't get overtime, but if we're going to hold them to those standards, and they should be, then we're going to have to pay for them. We're going to have to make sure that we can ensure a female DO is there. So there was a lot of organizational problems that was mixed in with that issue that happened. I'm not going to comment on the case because, just like Rex, I read about it, but unless you're there and you have the facts, it's kind of difficult to decide and try it outside here in a public forum. But I will say this, yes, I absolutely believe that a female DO should be present at all times. I believe that we need to find a way to make the facilities more the same as a male juvenile has over there. Thank you.
I'm going to ask about a question that the sheriff may not have a direct role in, but certainly can have a leadership role in, and that is diversion programs, alternative sentencing. And so I want to ask you both if you support diversion programs and alternative sentencing options for non-violent offenders, and how will your office collaborate with the court systems to identify potential applicants for these programs early on in the arrest and detainment process? Rex?
I fully support diversion programs. My first experience with that is also working with the local community on persons with mental illness. Our county jails are not the place to be holding on people with mental illness or those that are nonviolent. We also should not be turning our county jails into essentially a debtor's prison where you're holding, let's say, $500 in traffic tickets, so we keep you in jail for 6 months and make it impossible for you to pay for your tickets. We have to develop some diversion programs that are agreeable with the judges, with our judiciary, with the district attorney's office, and with the public defender's office. How are we going to coordinate this? How do we work it? It's also look at involving the community, such as if we have someone with some minor misdemeanor warrants out, if we have persons within the community that might know them, contact them, ask them, just go tell a person, come and turn themselves in before they get arrested.
100% supportive for personal reasons as well as economical, and because it's a human service. I was at the Women in Recovery today in support of the criminal justice reform, and I believe that as a county jail, we do need to enter in as part of the criminal justice system and do our part to help with the mentally ill as well as substance abuse and nonviolent offenders. It's a proven system. I will work in partnership with Women in Recovery, Mental Health Association of Oklahoma, and without saying 100%, they're going to have 99.9% access to David L. Moss to implement those programs in partnership. And there are some people here in the crowd, so they'll be able to hold me to it. But so I absolutely believe in it. It's a human service. We've got to start providing, looking into it. And for those that like to put numbers to it, yes, it does help with the budget. Thank you.
Vic, you touched on the issue of mentally ill in jail, and that's obviously an issue that the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office has to deal with. In fact, we're building a pod, at least one, maybe two pods right now for mentally ill. And so I want to ask you both how you plan on making sure deputies and staff are trained to deal with prisoners or civilians with mental illnesses. Vic, you go first.
We've got to provide the training for it, no ifs, ands, or buts, but we can do that in coordination again with those programs that I just talked about. This has got to be a community response. You cannot say, hey, it's law enforcement's problem, you pay for it. That's what we've done traditionally, and we failed at it. It's got to be a combination, a collaboration between a multitude of programs and community, including you. You've got to support legislation for training, proper training, and we'll do our part. We'll ensure that there are deputies, DOs that have received proper de-escalation training, mental health training. We'll make it a standard part of in-service training at the Sheriff's Office if I'm elected Sheriff. Thank you.
With the issue of the mental health pod, the short term, of course, we're going to have specialized training. The in-service training on how to handle crisis intervention training, it's good, but I do not think that's sufficient if we're going to have people specializing in handling just those pods. We need a little more work. We need to have someone that is a specialist at all times in here on handling those issues. That said, this is one of those pet peeves of mine. I remember when we had facilities where we actually treated and took care of the mentally ill, and we started shutting those down. We were promised that funding would be coming out to help take care of them in a public venue. That money did not happen. One of the big differences you will see with me is that I am a sheriff's candidate and a person who is not afraid to say, this is going to cost money. People, that's a tax increase. I'm not afraid to walk to the state legislature and say, enough of the cutting, you've hurt us, you've cut us and hurt us in all areas, start bringing some money back.
Someone asked kind of a general question and then combine it with another question that one of our audience members asked. What would your #1 priority be if you became sheriff? And a related question, how would each candidate deploy officers across Tulsa County? So would you change the way that your deputies are deployed, or sort of what's your #1 priority? And talk about deployment. And Rex, you go first.
The unincorporated area of Tulsa County represents roughly 5% of the land area of Tulsa County. However, those areas are rather spread out, so I want to make sure that we have at least 2 cars, 2 persons in a car, or 2 cars in that area reasonably reactive to each other. One of the things on training that I want to make sure I get across is when I started in '73, frequently the philosophy was the old Texas Ranger, 1 riot, 1 officer. That was a great way to get people hurt. That's a great way to shoot people that don't need to get shot. Don't be afraid to get back up, wait on the help. The rest of the manpower, one of the issues I had with Sharon Robinette, I asked her what the manning levels were and how many vacancies, and she said, I can't answer that because we don't know what our manning levels are going to be until we get our budget.
And he's touched on it just slightly. Manpower is an issue. We have to be creative. We have to work in partnership with the communities in those areas and find out where are our problem areas. We'll target those areas. They do not have the manpower to put deputies 2 at a time in each corner of Tulsa County. Let's be realistic. I'd love to get to that point if I'm elected sheriff, and that's going to take a whole lot more than just me saying it. So we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to respond to hot spots. We're going to have to work in coordination with the areas that surround Tulsa County, the municipalities, not just TPD. Thank you.
One of the issues in this campaign has been campaign finance. And I just want to ask, just sort of for you to discuss how your campaign is financed. And that's it. That's the question. How's your campaign financed?
My campaign is financed by supporters who I've sat down and talked with, people who they have sat down and talked with, and listen to my message and believe that I'm the individual to take up the sheriff's office role. Campaigning is run by campaign donations. Campaign donations do not grow on a tree. You have to go out and you talk to people and you convince them why they should give you money. And if at the end of the day, if they believe that you're that individual and they feel strongly about it, and people in Tulsa County feel strongly about their sheriff, especially under these circumstances, then they're going to help you out, not just through a vote, but support, word of mouth, and campaign donations. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of 16-hour days, and I started October 10th, and I still continue to do it. I'm proud of each and every one of my donations, supporters, and I'll stand by them. Thank you.
Unfortunately, our elective system is run on money. I congratulate my opponent. He got started much earlier, much better organized than I was. I started the week before the campaign deadline when I was asked if I would run for the job. That said, it's my responsibility to get my message out there. I have much less resource than my opponent, but that is not the issue. The issue is, do I have a message that resonates with the public? If I have a message that resonates, and if I'm effective in getting that message out there, that is my responsibility and I win. If I fail in either one of those two areas, I lose. It is not necessarily just an issue of, gee, the other guy has more money, or I didn't have enough money. Do I communicate? Do I have a message? Am I what you want for your sheriff?
Thank you. So one of the issues that's been prominent in this race has been the deadly force, use of deadly force, obviously, that sort of got some of the public opinion going regarding the current problems with the sheriff's office. So I want to ask you both what changes, if any, will you pursue for the current policies regarding the use of deadly force? And I would note that the CSI report that just came out showed that very few of the deputies actually understood what the department's policy was on deadly force and didn't know how to deploy it. Go ahead, Vic.
That's a huge issue. I think everybody in here can agree that's at the top, number one topic of law enforcement is the use of deadly force. And it is, let me just make it clear, having been involved in two of those, they're not something that law enforcement gets up, goes to work and says, I'd like to get in a shooting today. They're scary, they're traumatizing, not only for the individual's family who's been shot or what have you, but also the law enforcement officer. Contrary to some people's belief, that's not what we want to do. It's the last thing we want to engage in. That being said, it's a part of our job. We take an oath to protect the citizens with our life if need be, and we take that very seriously. Deputies, officers, law enforcement, period, have to have a solid base, a solid use of force to be able to stand upon, depend upon, and rely upon when they make that split-second decision. And it often is a very split-second decision that many others afterwards, in hindsight, will judge under perfect, peaceful, quiet circumstances, not in a dark alley with a loud noise coming at you and a loud flash. So they have to have the support in ways of, in terms of not only from their department, their community, that they're doing, that they have been entrusted with that type of ability to take someone's life during the commission of their duties. We stand by it, and one of the biggest things is having a solid foundation in policies and procedures regarding use of force. Thank you. A minute is way too fast for that, by the way.
First, and from the CSI report, yes, the Tulsa County policies and procedures are more than a little confusing. The sad part is they don't need to be that way. Police departments around the country have got model programs and model training on when the proper times to use deadly force are. Then your training goes into it. Certainly don't train and work with it. Now, all of that being said, I am a believer in, yes, think globally. Look what's going on around the world, but act globally. Yes, we have had some tragedies across the United States. In Tulsa, last year, the Tulsa Police Department, when it had this many fatal shootings in the entire year. That means Tulsa is not a problem. Tulsa County fired 9 rounds in the line of duty. 8 of those were with injured animals. My friends, that is not the sign of runaway law enforcement and gun happy. Along that line, though, in '73, when I first became an officer, we did not worry about thinking that having to approach every situation that pretty much anybody standing there can be armed. People did not wander our streets armed, and we did not have to accept that they were armed. It's a different makeup now.
So this is going to be the last question before closing statements. I'm combining a couple of related questions. So first, broadly, how do you both intend to recruit and retain quality people to be deputies and detention officers? And what are your feelings about the appraisers that have been handpicked by the sheriff, who has acknowledged that these positions are purely patronage positions? So recruiting and retaining good people and the appraisers. Go ahead. Rex.
First, I agree with the CSO report when it said that we need to increase the wages of our recruiting wages of 5%. Our deputies have had 1 raise in 7 years of 5%. That's what, about 1.3% a year. No wonder we're losing a lot of our deputies. We want to make sure that they understand that they are protected here. There's currently a 5-year probationary period, which made our new deputies and detention officers vulnerable to predatory supervisors that want to make them work their extra jobs. As far as the appraisers go, I want to make sure that anybody that's in the appraiser's office is fully qualified as an appraiser. That said, the appraiser's office, those positions do not belong in the sheriff's office. That is not a logical function for the sheriff's office. Those positions belong in the county appraiser's office.
I agree about the pay, by the way. I said from the beginning, I believe that the sheriff's office is vastly underpaid, understaffed, among other things. But creating a stable work environment where everybody's held accountable, not just deputies and DOs. Creating a career path inside of the jail for DOs who want to work inside the jail, and those people exist. And that's a tough job. I'll be honest with you, I've done a lot in law enforcement. Jail's not one I really want to do. As a DO, they do an extremely tough job. They should be paid for it, and there should be a career path in there for them. As far as the appraisers, qualified people, again, qualified people. And that does not mean there's a little bit of ignorance behind the appraiser's office. That does not mean having to be a certified appraiser. In fact, Tulsa and Oklahoma County have 143 and 172 certified appraisers, but there are counties in Oklahoma that have 0. So what happens when you say that you must only have a certified appraiser? There are people that are qualified to do that job that don't necessarily have to be a certified appraiser. And again, 1 minute is way too short to talk about these things.
Okay, I lied. I've got one more question. I think this kind of leads into closing statements, but I want each of you to describe why you want to be sheriff of Tulsa County, especially after all this happened. Why do you want this job big?
If we're going to stand before you and tell you that we're passionate about providing professional law enforcement service, that we're passionate about serving our communities, it can't be only under comfortable circumstances. When I decided to do this, I knew what I was stepping into. But again, if not me, then who? And that's why, again, I commend the candidates in the primary, Mr. Berry, because at the end of the day, I believe, at least mine is, and I believe that theirs were, is to serve you and provide that service under difficult circumstances. The good thing is that there's a lot of great people at the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office. I can tell you that. I know them, I've met them, I've worked with them over the years. So the foundation is going to be there, okay? Yeah, is there a lot of change that we need to do? Sure. Is there going to be positive change? Absolutely. But again, in the best interest of the office, if we maintain that decision-making process, at the end of the day, we'll provide you with the best law enforcement service possible. And I believe that the Sheriff's Office can be that premier agency here in Tulsa and in the state of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Now, like many people, particularly when you get to the age of 66, After I came back from overseas, I did not intend to work another full-time job. I was going to take it easy and play with my grandkids and my new 10-month-old granddaughter. However, as the situation started falling, I had very high respect for both John Bowman and Rick Weigel. I'm also one of those that would sit back and complain about who the politicians are, but never get involved. As I saw what was happening, what was falling, looked at the skills, and I was recruited to do the job, I got to looking, I really do have the skills to do this. I don't see anyone else with quite my combination of skills and experience. And if I just sit on the sidelines and not help, then I'm a big part of the problem. So I have a responsibility to the community, for my own self-respect, and to the generations to give the best abilities and the best effort that I can to my community.
Thank you. Now we're going to do closing statements, and at the point toss, Vic, you have 2 minutes to make your closing statement.
We're in a critical time in Tulsa. I believe that this is historically one of the most important votes that you will cast come April 5th. First sheriff in 26 years, new sheriff in 26 years. That's big time, and under the circumstances, it's up to you, it's incumbent upon you to make the right decisions. This is going to be a long road. Anybody that says anything different, they're lying to you. It's going to take a lot of energy, engagement. You've got to be there. I've made it clear. I bring that energy, but it'll last 2, in a perfect world, 3 terms. And please, if I go any further than that, somebody punch me in the face. And I mean that, because it's a high energy job. You have to be engaged with the people there. You have to be engaged in every facet of that organization and any organization that you're going to lead that serves people. And it's going to be difficult. But we can do it. And I say we because it's going to take a community effort from every type of community. And I mean business community, Hispanic community, African American community, you name it. We're going to need your help. We want your involvement. I believe that the Sheriff's Office is unique in law enforcement because guess who appoints them? You do. That's pretty important. And so regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, look at the ability and the experience of each of Rex and I and determine at the end of the day who's best for Tulsa County. And yes, it's a Democrat, Republican, but at the end of the day, remember, it's who's best for that office, who brings the skills that are needed under the circumstances, who brings the energy and experience. And I believe that I do. And I'm getting the stop sign again. So thank you very much for showing up today. I hope to have your support April 5th. And if everything goes well into November. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity of being here. You know, it's a shame that we don't get to do some mudslinging because we're making this awfully bland here. Actually, I consider on this situation, particularly after 26 years of Stanley Glands, the actual winners on this are the citizens of Tulsa County. My opponent is a very good man. I think he could do a great job. I think I could do a better job. What I also look at is that the Sheriff's Office is part of a larger machine. We are what makes it safe. But I also have considerable concerns, particularly after my experience working with long-term families and children, that this current nonsense of cutting our taxes and killing our schools, that means the more money you take away from our schools and our early child development, the more problems, mental issues you're going to have, more juvenile problems you're going to have, the bigger your prisons you're going to get, and the bigger, more money you're going to have to put in county jails, and more money you have to give to make people like me. Money on the early side with children, that's an investment. Putting money into the prisons and the jails to keep trying to chase the dog's tail is simply a very, very bad investment. I am very strong on that issue. We've had 26 years of Stanley Glands. Some of his backers are trying to stay involved in continuing their influence on it. The next big question for you is, what do you want your Sheriff's Department to look like 26 years from now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both of the candidates today for their participation and for their willingness to run for public office. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to just give a couple quick reminders before we go tonight about this election. The Tulsa County Sheriff's election is a special election to replace Stanley Glanz, who resigned from office, and the winner of the special election will assume the sheriff position only until the end of 2016, which is when Sheriff Glanz's term would have ended. So the April 5th special election will determine the winner of the race for Tulsa County Sheriff. All voters can participate in this election, and then they get to turn right around and start running for office again. Candidates who wish to run for sheriff for the term beginning January 2017 must file for office between April 13th and April 15th. Should there be multiple candidates in either party, a primary election will be held on June 28th, 2016. Then there'll be a runoff election if needed on August 23rd. Voters registered as independents will be allowed to vote in the Democratic primary due to a vote taken within that party earlier in the year. The two candidates who meet as a result of the primary and runoff elections will appear on the general election ballot on November 8th, 2014, but 2016. The winner of the November 8th general election will assume office in January 2017, and that'll be a full term. Voter registration for the election ends tomorrow, Friday, March 11th, so you still have a chance to register. League volunteers are here tonight, ready to register voters. The deadline to request absentee ballots is 5 p.m. March 30th, and the League also has absentee ballot applications on hand if you need one. Early voting is Thursday, March 31st, 8 to 6, Friday, April 1st, 8 to 6, and sample ballots will be posted on the Tulsa County Election Board website. Election day, again, April 5th, Tuesday. Be sure and take either the voter ID card issued by the Oklahoma Election Board or a government-issued photo ID. If you don't have either of these with you at the time you vote, Oklahoma law requires that you be allowed to fill out a provisional ballot. That's very important. If you get turned away from the polls for some reason, go ahead and ask for a provisional ballot, fill it out, and then they'll sort that out later. In addition, I encourage all of you to check out the League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Tulsa's voter guide online at www.vote411.org. All candidates who will appear on the April 5th ballot were invited to answer a set of questions specific to the office they're running for. Their answers are not edited for grammar, spelling, or content by the League. It's a good tool to educate yourself about the candidates running for office. And in addition to the Tulsa County Sheriff's candidates, the April 5th ballot will include the 4 Vision Tulsa propositions. The League of Women Voters also has a voter's guide to explain the 4 questions on vote411.org. I would add that the Frontier has a long series of minute videos that describe each project, so check that out. And again, thank you so much for participating and taking time to attend today's forum. Next comments by Elizabeth Harris, who is the president and TCC.
As she said, my name is Elizabeth Harris. I am the president of the board of the League of Women Voters here in Tulsa. So the League of Women Voters of Metro Tulsa, we're a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government and works to increase understanding of major public policy issues and